mantras of our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Our tasks are given, we are but instruments. Nothing is all our own that we create. The power that acts in us is not our force. With always our love and blessings, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, Book 4, The Book of Birth and Quest, Canto 4, The Quest, page 428. The world ways opened before Savitri. At first, a strangeness of new brilliant scenes peopled her mind and kept her body's gaze. But as she moved across the changing earth, a deeper consciousness welled up in her. A citizen of many scenes and climes, each soil and country it has made its home. It took all clans and peoples for her own, till the whole destiny of mankind was hers. These unfamiliar spaces on her way were known and neighbors to a sense within. Landscapes recurred like lost, forgotten fields, cities and rivers and plains. Her vision claimed like slow, recurring memories in front. The stars at night were her past brilliant friends. The winds murmured to her of ancient things, and she met nameless comrades loved by her once. All was a part of old forgotten selves. Vaguely or with a flash of sudden hints, her acts recalled a line of bygone power. Even her motion's purpose was not new. Traveler to a prefigured high event, she seemed to her remembering witness soul to trace again a journey often made. A guidance turned the dumb revolving wheels, and in the eager body of their speed, the dim masked hooded Godheads rode, who move assigned to man immutably from his birth, receivers of the inner and outer law, at once the agents of his spirit's will and witnesses and executors of his fate. Inexorably faithful to their task, they hold his nature's sequence in their guard, carrying the unbroken thread old lives have spun. Words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo, taken from the collective works of our Lord Sri Aurobindo, SABCL, Book Letters on Yoga, Part 4, Section 1, The Triple Transformation, Psychic, Spiritual, Supramental, Part 1, page 1098. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo continues to say, "It seems to me that you must know by this time the psychic being that it is behind the veil and its consciousness also. Only a little comes out in the mind, vital, and physical. When that consciousness is not concealed, when you're aware of your soul, the psychic being, when its feeling and consciousness are yours, then you have got the consciousness of the psychic being. Let me repeat. When that consciousness is not concealed, when you are aware of your soul, the psychic being, when its feelings and consciousness are yours, then you have got the consciousness of the psychic being. The feelings and aspirations of the psychic being are all turned towards the truth and right consciousness and the divine. It is the only part that cannot be touched by the hostile forces and their suggestions. The psychic being emerges slowly in most men, even after taking up the sadhana. There is so much in the vital and the mental that has to change and readjust itself before the psychic can be entirely free. One has to wait till the necessary progress has gone far enough before it can burst its age-long veil and come in front to control the nature. It is true that nothing can give us so much inner happiness and joy, though peace can come by the mental and vital liberation or through the growth of a strong samatha in the being. There is no process for getting the psychic in front. It comes like the other things. You have to aspire for it, and it can only happen when you are sufficiently advanced. Then only can the psychic being fully open when the sadhak has got rid of the mixture of the vital motives with his sadhana and is capable of a simple and sincere self-offering to the Divine Mother. If there is a kind of egoistic turn or insincerity of motive, if the yoga is done under a pressure of vital demands or partly or wholly to satisfy some spiritual or other ambition, pride, vanity, or seeking after power, position, or influence over others, or with any push towards satisfying any vital desire with the help of the yogic force, then the psychic cannot open, or opens only partially or only at times and shuts again because it is veiled by the vital activities. The psychic fire fails in the strangling vital smoke. Also, if the mind takes the leading part in the yoga, if the mind takes the leading part in integral yoga and puts the inner soul into the background, or if the bhakti or other movements of the sadhana take more of a vital than of a psychic form, there is the same inability. Purity, simple sincerity, and the capacity of an unegoistic, unmixed self offering without pretension or demand are the conditions of an entire opening of the psychic being. Our Lord says, of course, the ego and the vital with its claims and desires is always the main obstacle to the emergence of the psychic. For they make one live, act, do sadhana, even for one's own sake, and psychization means to live, act, and do sadhana for the sake of the divine. If desire is rejected and no longer governs the thought, feeling, or action, and there is a steady aspiration of an entirely sincere self-giving, the psychic usually, after a time, opens of itself. To bring the psychic forward, selfishness and demand, which is the base of the vital feelings, must be got rid of, at least never accepted. The flow of love and joy from the heart center can be misused on a large scale only if there is a strong and vehement vital ego not accustomed to correction, or else a vital full of kama vasana. On a small scale, it can be misused by the small selfishnesses, vanities, ambitions, demands of the lower vital supporting themselves upon it. If you are on God, Against these things, then there is no danger of misuse. If the psychic puts forth psychic discernment along with the love, there is no danger, for the light of the psychic discernment at once refuses all mixture or misuse. Aspiration, constant and sincere, and the will to turn to the divine alone are the best means to bring forward the psychic. The psychic comes forward of itself either through constant love and aspiration, or when the mind and vital have been made ready by the descent from above and the working of the force. If there is the will to surrender in the central being, then the psychic can come forward. The central being is above. Most people are not aware of the central being, the Jivatma. They are aware only of the ego. The psychic is the soul. It is a portion of the divine that supports the mind and body in the evolution. The psychic gets the divine's help directly from the divine. The central being is that on which all the others depends. If it makes its surrender, that is, renounces its separate fulfillment in order to be an instrument of the divine, then it is easier for the mind, vital and physical, to surrender. It has nothing to do with suitable circumstances. If the will of the center being turns towards the union with the divine, then it renounces its special, separate fulfillment. The psychic being has to be surrendered consciously and with more and more knowledge. The psychic aspires to the divine or answers to things divine. It is surrendered in principle, but it has to develop its surrender in detail, carrying with it the surrender of all the being. Nothing done in the past or present can prevent the psychic from coming forward if there is the true will to get rid of these things and live in the psychic and spiritual consciousness. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, your first experience was that of the opening of the psychic. You become aware of the psychic being and its aspirations and experiences and of the external being in front as two separate parts of your consciousness. You were not able to keep this experience because the vital was not purified and pulled you out into the ordinary external consciousness. Afterwards, you got back into the psychic and were at the same time able to see your ordinary vital nature, to become aware of its defects, and to work by the power of the psychic for its purification. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, I wrote to you at the beginning that this was the way. For if the psychic is awake and in front, it becomes easy to remain conscious of the things that have to be changed in the external nature. And it is comparatively easy too to change them. But if the psychic gets veiled and retires in the background, the outer nature left to itself finds it difficult to remain conscious of its own wrong moments, and even with great effort cannot succeed in getting rid of them. You can see yourself as in the matter of food, that with the psychic active and awake, the right attitude comes naturally, and whatever difficulty there was soon diminishes or even disappears. I told you also, says our Lord, at that time that there was a third part of the nature, the inner being with the inner mind, vital and physical, of which you were not at all aware, but which must also open in turn. It is this that has happened in your last experience. What you felt as a part of you, yourself, but not your physical self, rising to meet the higher consciousness above, was this inner being. It was your inner, higher, vital being which rose in that way to join the highest self above. And it was able to do so because the work of purifying the outer vital nature had begun in earnest. Each time there is a purification of the outer nature, it becomes possible for the inner being to reveal itself, to become free and to open to the higher consciousness above. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, when this happens, several other things happen at the same time. First, one becomes aware of the silent self above, free, wide, without limits, pure, untroubled by the mind, vital and physical movements, empty of ego, limited personality. This is what you have described in your letter. Secondly, the divine power descends through this silence and freedom of the self and begins to work in you. This is what you felt as a pressure. It is coming through the top of the head, the forehead and eyes and nose meant that it was working to open the mental centers, especially the two higher centers of thought and will and vision in the inner mental being. These two centers are called the 1,000-petal lotus, the Agnya chakra between the eyebrows. Thirdly, by this working, the inner parts of the being are opened and freed. You are liberated from the limitations of the personal mind, vital and physical, and become aware of a wider consciousness in which you can be more capable of the needed transformation. But that is necessarily a matter of time and long working, and you are only taking the first steps in this way. When one goes into the inner being, the tendency is to go entirely inside and lose consciousness of the outside world. This is what people call samadhi. But it is also necessary to be able to have the same experience of the self, the working of the inner consciousness in the waking state. The best rule for you will be to allow the entire going inside only when you are alone and not likely to be disturbed. And at other times to accustom yourself to have these experiences with the physical consciousness awake and participating in them, at least aware of them. When the psychic being awakens, you grow conscious of your own soul, you know yourself, and you no longer commit the mistake of identifying yourself with the mind or the vital being. You do not mistake them for the soul. Secondly, when awakened, the psychic being gives true bhakti for God or for the Guru. That bhakti is quite different from the mind or the vital bhakti. In the mind, one may have admiration or appreciation for the intellectual greatness of the man or the Guru, but it is merely mental. It does not carry the matter very far. Of course, there is no harm in having that, but by itself it does not open the whole of the inner being, it only establishes a mental contact. The vital bhakti demands and demands, it imposes its own conditions, it surrenders itself to God, but conditionally it says to God, "You're so great, I worship you, and now satisfy my this desire, that ambition, make me great, make me a great sadhak, a great yogin," etc. The unillumined mind also surrenders to the truth but makes its own condition. It says to the truth, "Satisfy my judgment and my opinion." It demands the truth to cast itself in the mind's own forms. The vital being also insists on the truth to throw itself into its own moment of force. The vital being pulls at the higher power, pulls and pulls at the vital being of the Guru. Both of them, the mind, the mental and the vital, have got a mental reservation in their surrender. But the psychic being and its bhakti are not like that, because it is in direct communication with the divinity behind. It is capable of true bhakti. Psychic bhakti does not make any demand, makes no reservation. It is satisfied with its own existence. The psychic being knows how to obey the truth in the right way. It gives itself up truly to God or to Guru, and because it can give itself up truly, therefore it can also receive truly. Thirdly, when the psychic being comes to the surface, it feels sad when the mental or vital is making a fool of itself. That sadness is purity offended. When the mind is playing its own game or the vital being is carried away by its own impulses, it is the psychic being which says, I do not want these things. What am I here for, after all? I am here for the truth. I am not here for these things. Psychic sadness is again different from mental dissatisfaction or vital sadness or physical depression. If the psychic being is strong, it makes itself felt on the mental or the vital being and forces them, compels them to change. But if it is weak, the other parts takes advantage of it and uses the psychic sadness to their own advantage. In some cases, the psychic being comes to the surface, upsets the mental, that's a mind, the vital being, throws everything into disorder. But if the mind or vital is stronger than the psychic, then it casts only an occasional influence and gradually retires behind. All its cry is in the wilderness, and the mind and the vital being goes on in its round. Lastly, the psychic being refuses to be deceived by appearances. It is not carried away by falsehood. It refuses to be depressed by falsehood, nor does it exaggerate the truth. For example, even if everything around says there is no God, the psychic being refuses to believe in it. It says, I know because I feel. And because it knows the thing behind, it is not deceived by appearances. It immediately feels the divine force. Also, when the psychic being is awakened, it throws out all the dross from the emotional being and makes it free from sentimentalization, from sentimentalism, or the lower play of emotionalism. But it does not carry in it the dryness of the mind or the exaggeration of the vital feelings. It gives the just touch to each emotion. The sign of the psychics coming forward, it's a central love, a bhakti, surrender, gives everything. A sight within that sees always clearly what is spiritually right or wrong automatically rejects the later, a moment of entire consecration and dedication of all in one to the Divine Mother. That is one part of the psychic experience. The other is a complete self giving, absence of demand, prominence of the psychic being, by which all that is false, wrong, egoistic, contrary to the divine truth, will, divine purity, and light is shown, falls away, cannot prevail in nature. With all that, the increase of the psychic qualities, gratitude, obedience, unselfishness, fidelity to the true perception, true impulse, etc., that comes from the Divine Mother or leads to the Mother. When this side grows, then the other, the presence, the love, the joy, and the beauty can develop and be permanently there. And Lord Aurobindo says, the conversion which keeps the consciousness turned towards the light and makes the right attitude spontaneous and natural, abiding and rejection also spontaneous, is the psychic conversion. That is to say, man usually lives in his vital, and the body is its instrument, and the mind its counselor and minister, except for the few mental men who live mostly for the things of the mind, but even they are in subjection to the vital in their ordinary moments. The spiritual conversion begins when the soul begins to insist on a deeper life and is complete when the psychic being becomes the basis or the leader of the consciousness and mind and vital and body and are led by it and obey it. Of course, if that once happens fully, doubt, depression, despair cannot come any longer, although they may be and are difficulties still. It is if it is not fully, stilly, fundamentally accomplished, even then these things either do not come or are brief passing clouds on the surface, for there is a rock of support and certitude at the base which, even if partially covered, cannot disappear altogether. Mostly, however, the constant recurrence of depression and despair or doubt and revolt is due to a mental or vital formation which takes hold of the vital mind, makes it run around always in the same circle at the slightest provoking cause or even without any cause. It is like an illness to which the body consents from habit and from belief in the illness, even though it suffers from it. Once started, the illness runs its habitual course unless it is cut short by some strong counteracting force. If once the body can withdraw its consent, the illness immediately or quickly ceases. That was the secret of the Q system. So, too, if the vital mind withdraws its consent, refuses to be dominated by the habitual suggestions and movements, these recurrences of depression and despair can be made soon to cease. But it is not easy for this mind, once it has got into the habit of consent, even a quiet, passive and suffering and reluctant consent, to cancel the habit and get rid of the black circle. It can be done easily only when the mind refuses any longer to believe in the suggestions or accept the ideas or feelings that start the circle. To be continued.